Commissioner Bodeman? Commissioner Koenig?
Here.
Commissioner Rose?
Here.
Commissioner Stoliar?
Here.
Commissioner Hitchcock?
Here.
Vice Chair Charlie?
Present.
And Chair Miles.
Present. Thank you. Before we start with items on our agenda, we'll start with time for public comment on items not on our agenda. Members of the public will be given 3 minutes apiece. You can either raise a hand, come up to the podium, or email public comments in email to publiccomment@tcmmail.org. Do we have any members of public here that would like to add? No. All right, Rebecca, do we have any raised hands or email public comment?
I'm not seeing any raised hands and we did not receive any emailed public comment.
Excellent. At this time, we will close public comment and move to presentations. Emily Hitchcock, welcome to the commission. Please take a minute to introduce yourself as our new youth commissioner.
Awesome. It's okay if I'm seated here?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So my name's Emily Hitchcock. I'm a senior at Redwood High School, as you guys now know, and I'm really, really thrilled to be a part of the Parks and Recreation Committee. It's really important to me because, I've recently embarked on a project that is heavily intertwined with what Parks and Recreation is defined as, I would even say. I mean, it's called the People's Garden. It's a movement by the USDA, and just kind of, using our land in Corte Madera, our parks, specifically Cove Park, and to connect it with the citizens of Corte Madera in an enjoyable and meaningful way. So, I mean, through that experience, I really realized that, working with the foundations of where that garden is going to be, which has an easement with the town and the school, that's really a target of mine. And so I'm really, really excited to be here and do more and continue to hone what you guys have done and continue to do.
Thank you, Emily. Welcome. Yes. Are there any commissioner questions before we open public comment on Emily's introduction?
No questions. Just really glad to have you.
Is there anybody from the public that would like to comment? We got a thumbs up in the public. And I'm assuming there are no emailed public comments or raised hands. Excellent. All right. So moving on to the consent calendar. These are items that are routine or have been previously discussed, do not require any further discussion. Any member of the public is welcome to make a comment or pull an item for the consent calendar. We'll start by asking if anyone from the commission would like to.
Sorry, Shannon, sorry, I spelled it wrong. Sorry.
Yes.
Commissioner Rose,
Yes.
Commissioner Stoliar,
Yes.
and Commissioner Hitchcock.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. We're gonna have to wait a second until Rebecca gets that working because I have to show a presentation.
Okay.
I can probably start the discussion and then kind of cut over if that's okay.
Sounds good.
Is that okay?
So we're moving on to our business items. I'll give you a little minute, Tim. First on our business items today is the review of the pickleball and tennis court rules for Town Park and Granada Park.
All right, let's start the discussion. Hopefully it comes online to show you some of the video. So we are here to kind of review where we've come with pickleball in Corte Madera. We started in 2019 with the idea of striping 2 temporary courts at Town Park. They are 2 courts on 1 court closest to the parking lot. We added 2 more courts in 2024 in July up at Granada Park that are 2 courts on one side of a court, again, dedicated pickleball on top of tennis. And then hopefully this fall, we will have 2 dedicated courts coming on board at Town Park. When we had this discussion in the conceptual plan, we had a discussion about bringing a discussion back to commission about rules for dedicated pickleball and shared courts. I believe we're the only facility in Marin that has dedicated courts next to shared courts. So tonight we're gonna have a discussion of just some general questions that have come up for staff and for the public. Pickleball is not going anywhere. It's getting more popular. We did a survey and included in the, that got louder, sorry. They included in the packet from surrounding cities, Larkspur, Sausalito, Mill Valley, the Ranch at Tiburon, and Strawberry of their rules for both dedicated courts and shared courts. Every court and every rule are very complicated. There's no simple cookie cutter answer. This is the way it should be. Everybody has certain types of guidelines or restrictions they have to kind of work around to make sure that the need is met in the community. Tonight, we're looking for feedback based on the questions that we're going to talk about in a second. For a long time, we've had some open-ended questions about how we should handle the new dedicated courts coming on, the shared courts that are there at both Granada and Town Park, and just ideas and thoughts. So this is very much an open-ended discussion of some questions we have for. Sorry, those are locked for that reason.
Oh, let's not open.
Excuse me. Kind of the first line of question was, right now our courts are keyed. So we are one of the last towns in Marin besides San Anselmo who have keyed courts. Everybody else several years ago got rid of the keys. They basically are a first come, first serve, or they're a rental system, but they got rid of the keyed system. We bring about $12,000 in revenue in those keys sales. We spend it right back out in the cost of printing new keys, reissuing keys, relocking everything. There's not a huge money revenue from that, which is more of a way, I think, back when they put it in to make sure that residents who came to the rec center, bought the key, either the full year or half year, was able to have access to the courts. So that's one question. Obviously, what was driven a lot was when we decided the dedicated pickleball courts, the ball wall went away. And there was an interest in commission that if the ball wall is going to be included in the new pickleball courts, which it is, finding a way so a free resource can still be used by the public on a regular basis. Second question to come up was, with the new dedicated pickleball courts right next to the tennis courts, do we still allow pickleball in the tennis courts? Is it something where we keep allowing people to play on both courts? Obviously, some challenges there with the amount of people that can play pickleball at one time. One other concern is our current classes usually held about 10 to 12 people, which is tight on just a pickleball court alone. But again, we want to make sure that tennis has access just as pickleball does. And last is just in the summer months when it's nice to play under lights. So if we choose to go just pickleball only or tennis only, then there's not an ability for people to play under the lights in the summer months or the fall months, which is obviously, as today is a beautiful night out. The other question that came up out of this was a lot of cities use an online court reservation system where you can guarantee that you have a court at this time, you pay for it, and it's reserved for yourself, and that you know you have the court. So those are kind of some of the things that we are posing. I'd have a discussion with, and then I'll kind of finish my staff recommendation and kind of go question by question. Is it working or still not? Okay. Does anybody want to see what the current striping of pickleball and tennis look at the two facilities? Would that be helpful for the discussion before we go forward? Okay, sorry. So before we go any further, let me just make sure this will work. This is currently, it opens, come on. It's trying. It's not a good technology night, clearly. They're all pictures.
So Tim, if I just to recap where you're looking for feedback, it's on key to key or not to key or not to key,
To key or not to key.
to stripe or not to stripe the tennis courts,
To leave the tennis courts at Town Park striped or to remove them.
reservation system.
To do some type of reservation, some people could actually reserve courts online so they could be guaranteed that they would have a spot to play tennis or play pickleball on a regular basis. Yeah, this is not working. Trying to email them to you, but I don't know if they'll go through. Sorry.
So Tim, kind of related to these 3 points, I'll jump into questions while you're pulling up pictures. Have you gotten feedback or substantial feedback from anyone in the community related to these questions?
I think the true tennis players will tell you they want their tennis courts back. I think especially with the 2 new dedicated pickleball courts going in. I think that a lot of cities who have multiple courts striped at one place have a bigger problem than we would just having 2 courts. Larkspur, for example, has 8 courts, tennis courts striped, and then 8 courts on top of the pickleball. There's a larger group that comes out and plays there. I think just most recently we had a large group who played some pickleball over the weekend at Granada. But otherwise we haven't had the huge complaints besides from the true tennis players who have always griped that pickleball doesn't belong on a tennis court. So that's the thing we've had. Otherwise, I think for the tennis court keys, people have been very respectful in buying them. I think some people still don't follow the rules and have private lessons or let other people in, or prop the door open. But I think that's the few and far between. But I think mostly it's they'd like to know when the court's available besides our regular classes that are booked on them. If you want to be able to confirm that you have a court to go play on, can you go and reserve something or can you not? And a lot of cities have gone to a third-party system to reserve all that for them.
Are you looking for the Google Earth?
I'm trying to I have all these pictures that I had and it does not seem to want to work. So I don't know. I'm going to try to close it and restart it and see if I can. Let me try one more time. My apologies.
I had just a quick question regarding the pickleball lines that we'll be able to see here in a few minutes, though. I'm guessing that we would have to resurface the entire tennis court just to remove those lines, correct? And that would incur quite a cost.
Yes, we would.
Because resurfacing is pretty expensive too.
It can be, yes. I mean, it would probably something we put in the work plan for next year. But it would be to resurface so that it is just a tennis court. Oh, there we go. Look at that. It worked this time. So here is Town Park. The 2 pickleball courts are located on the bottom half of this tennis court in the bottom. They're a shared area. So my cursor's not working, sorry. On the bottom half, you can faintly see 2 lines that are there are the pickleball courts. And then what we've had before in the past is people have temporarily put down chalk or sometimes paint or duct tape. Just crashed the whole thing. This is not good technology day.
We're good.
It's just not what's going right now. Let's try it one more time. Wow. Try one more time. Then I'm going to give up. Sorry. I don't think it'll go through. They're okay. So there is what currently Town Park looks like. The 2 courts on the bottom. It doesn't.
Okay, so that's just striped for.
That is striped for both tennis and the
Pickleball.
bottom 2 courts are very faintly pickleball on the very bottom.
However, I would argue it's not that faint. If you're a tennis player, those
That's-
lines are very, very obvious. I think the picture doesn't quite do it justice.
Picture does not do it justice. If I can get the next one to
They
load.
really are like another set of,
So here are the lines on the tennis court. Still not a great photo. Sorry about that. But if you are a tennis player, they are definitely a distraction to be there.
Is it?
yes.
Okay. Yeah, no, I wasn't sure if it was just the availability of pickleball on there that was the problem, or the actual lines are just.
I
distracting.
think those are 2 different issues, but the lines, I just wanted to clarify, they're just not this faint little marking. It's quite obvious when you're on the court itself.
Sorry, Zoom does not like me right now. I don't know why. We're going to try to see if it'll load at least one. So, okay, this is Granada. So there you can see quite clearly the pickleball courts do stand out on the tennis courts. Those were striped that way because of the way the curved fence is located. You were not able to put them up against the corner and have some shared line. You had to kind of put them in the center. So there are 2 courts there. The pickleball courts are back to back on that one tennis court, so that one other court is left open. So I'm not going to touch it again. I'm not going to take the chance. That is kind of how the pickleball courts do stand out on the tennis courts. So I think for discussion purposes tonight, those are kind of the 3 things we're asking for. We have a couple staff recommendations. The first is basically if we if we do decide to remove these, it wouldn't be until January 1st. Pickleball, keys are issued for a full year or a half year. Pickleball court's supposed to be open sometime in November, so really it's not going to be a huge change. It'll be next year when we make these big changes. So we wouldn't have to issue refunds or reissue anything. What we would do is communicate out to everyone who has a key saying, whatever we decide tonight, here are the new rules going forward. Either, hey, we're going to get rid of keys altogether. Hey, we're going to keep the lines at Town Park and we're going to do it as a pilot program. I think I'd like some true feedback because I really don't know who plays when. I'm not a pickleball player. I'm not a tennis player. Just when I walk by the park and see things, but I don't have true data of how many people are out there playing pickleball, how many people are out there playing tennis on a regular basis. So I think any decision we make tonight, we would set up a QR code for a year and track the data and say, hey, are you playing? What are you doing? Just so we have a better idea. The other thing I'd like to do is a lot of cities have instituted a paddle rack system for pickleball. Pickleball can get very angry. We don't get your turn. I equate it to the old quarter system on the old pinball machine where you put your quarter, you were due up next. It's very much that where you put your paddle in racks, so you know who's going to play up next, just for at least the dedicated pickleball courts, not include tennis. It gets a little complicated, but just for the dedicated pickleball courts, to do a pickleball rack system going forward. And then a couple of the rules were just not current in our current rules that are posted out there. The hours were wrong. There was no amplified music. So those are ones I want to add in as a staff recommendation. It's kind of a second discussion. We talk about our park signs after this, but court hours weren't correct in our current guides that are posted, and there wasn't amplified music. I'm sorry for all the hiccups on that. So basically, would like to have a discussion on kind of what we propose, and then any other things that we have forgotten or you've heard very passionate about, or the community would love to hear about.
Right, so commissioner questions? Yes.
Thank you. You said that you don't have data on how much tennis is happening and how much pickleball, but I wonder if the people that are out there that are true pickleball fans and tennis could maybe supply some rough estimates of that. So that's one thing. Also, have we always had a keyed system? Has it ever been an open play? Have we ever had reservations, or has that never been a possibility? And where it says it's for Corte Madera residents, who are you proving that to? Thank you.
You want to talk to the keys? You're longer than I have.
I can try to speak to the keys and maybe look up some information really quick, but I think the keyed system has been in use for at least longer than I've been here, and I want to say maybe 20 years. But I can go back, but I can find out pretty quickly in our archives. What was the first question?
So the Corte Madera residents,
Oh.
it's an honor system. I actually talked to Larkspur director, and they have Corte Madera Larkspur have priority on their courts, but it's truly an honor system. There's no checking of ideas, or nobody gets in fist fights over it, but it's more of the honor system of if you're supposed to have the priority. I think, the sign is up, but I don't know how you enforce it.
Larkspur includes Corte Madera in their priority
They do.
system, but we don't include them on our priority system, but they can buy keys at a reduced rate, correct?
Yes, residents for Corte Madera Larkspur have to get the resident rate for keys, and everything else is a non-resident.
Why do we have keys?
I think it was so that people in Corte Madera Larkspur had priority. You had to know about the keys to go to the rec center or purchase one, so you made sure you had access to the courts. I think that was why they instituted it years ago.
And part of the revenues ostensibly went toward maintenance of the courts. Parks and Rec and Public Works maintenance staff would sweep or use leaf blowers to get debris off the courts, and it was a time intensive task that they felt should be recouped. But I don't know that that is a significant issue. Yeah. I don't know if anything's changed, but I don't think the amount of time spent keeping the courts clean. Of course, I can't speak for Public Works, but I did do some surveying, and I don't know that is the same concern that it was maybe 10 years ago.
I mean, I'm interested in knowing if any of the commissioners have keys. I tell myself the lie that I would be playing impromptu tennis games if only I had a key. So for me, it's a barrier allegedly, but I don't know if anybody has them. They feel strongly about them. I don't know.
I've been a proud owner of a key, well, multiple, and in fact, I've lost a couple, so I've made my donations. I think the system, it does work. It's a little archaic. The fact that other towns have done away with it, I think is kind of a sign of where everything is moving. I think that it's been a little bit of vandalism, but nothing like really of note. And whether or not a key is going to prohibit that, I think is kind of obsolete because people find a way, jumping a fence, leaving it cracked open. I've certainly been there enough times to where I haven't even needed the key because it's either not working or somebody's left it open. Yeah, so I'm kind of right now leaning towards supporting trying it at least temporarily for a year without it, see if there's any problems that come of it, and we can kind of keep it as a work in progress.
I also have had a key for many years, and I think having played at other local courts that don't, it's just a difference that has always been there. I think in a way, like Tim mentioned, it does somehow sort of hold up the Corte Madera Larkspur resident priority, because I have waited hours of my life for tennis courts all over this place, and no one asks where you're from when you're waiting. Like, oh, you're waiting? Which town are you from? Like, it's just not how it goes. And so having to know about the access with the key, whether they're local residents or not, they're in the know. And so it does limit it to some degree, but I agree with Tim that people find a way in anyway. And our goal is for our facilities to be used by everybody. And if it's not a huge loss of revenue, I think it'd be very reasonable to put the keys aside, because I too have lost them. And that's frustrating.
Before we go further on discussion, let's make sure if there are any more questions, we'll then do public comment and come back for discussion. So
I wanted to know about the reservation, if that's ever been possible. And for the tennis players, have you gone to places where you can reserve? And do you use that?
I don't think we've ever reserved courts before. I know a lot of cities do it. It's by time block, which is different than our current rules. It's a match play, how many points you get to, where a lot of places it's a half hour, an hour reservable time slot that you would have. That would be the difference.
I've been to a few communities where there's reservation systems. It's very easy to be able to access by going online. I don't know for everybody in the community. Some people might struggle with it. It's been very, very effective in those areas. I think this issue is also linked to how to prove if you're local or not. I think if there's a way to bake in through the reservation system, if you make a reservation, resident or non-resident, it makes it a little less confrontational as well. If you've got a court booked, it's pretty easy to say, oh, go that direction. So I'm supportive of it, but there is also a cost, which I have no idea what it is and whether we can bake it into any existing system or not. Those would be questions that I would have on really what it does. And maybe that's like phase 2. If we try it without keys for a year, it's not working. Maybe we can transition into a reservation system. That might be a good idea.
I also have concern about the cost of whatever platform we use, and that people may reserve. And what I don't think we should do, and I don't think this is up for discussion, is have the key and a reservation, because if someone doesn't use their spot, then people can't access it. So I think a reservation system is great if it's cost efficient, and it would allow for a more organized use of the courts. And maybe that bleeds into whether the pickleball stripes continue or not, because it's just all more clear of who has access when.
And you've used a
I have.
reservation system?
In fact, I've used it when I've been out of town, like on holiday places, which is really neat. You're somewhere new, you're with friends, family, and you want to play, but don't belong to a club locally. It's a really nice option. And you pay for it too. I mean, at least the systems I've used, each time you get charged for the use. And if you're out of town, non-resident, you pay more. So potentially it's a revenue stream.
Okay, I did find some information in the archives. The tennis court keys were the key fees were instituted in early 2011 to provide a new source of revenue and help offset maintenance costs. The department continues to look for ways to increase revenue in an appropriate fashion through programs and special events, and just hope that this will provide a good opportunity for that.
Becca, does it have the rate we charged back in 2011?
Yes. I believe it was $40.
Which is-
Keys costs were $40 per year for residents and $50 for non-residents.
Which is why we haven't recouped any costs, because it has.
They're charging right now. I just raised those fees.
The program has raised approximately $1,100 in revenue to help with court maintenance.
Have we ever rented the courts? Like
We do not. We get that request a lot for both. I just want to go and rent the court, or I want to have a private lesson. But currently we have not allowed in our rules to people to rent the courts for those things.
Let's wrap up on questions, do public comment, and then come back for more discussion. So is there anyone from the public here in person that would like to make a comment? All right, anybody, Rebecca, online, any raised hands or emailed public comment?
I am not seeing any raised hands and we did not receive any emailed public comment.
This is a really fun one, especially if you've been spending time in the park now that we're doing construction. People are like, what is that that's going up over there? So the pickleball courts are not a secret anymore to anybody who's been to the park. And I am glad that we had that kind of conversation about making sure that we still had the ball wall and access for people who were losing that, because that has been, there have been pretty vocal people saying, what about the ball wall? So from a keys perspective, it's the only thing that's locked in the park, side of the bathrooms after hours. Our beautiful new basketball courts have not been vandalized, to my knowledge, and they are completely free to the public. So it's kind of nice on that perspective. I love the idea that as many people as we can get it to use it as possible. Now, I am not at the park during the school day, which I think is when a lot of our tennis and pickleball people play. But in the afternoons after school, there's not a tennis lesson going on. It's pretty quiet. So any things like, more people being able to use it, being able to access it, if it's the key removal, if it's renting out the space and being able to reserve it, so I know I'm not waiting in line. That has been a barrier for me. I have a key, but I go down, I'm like, I don't know if I only have an hour. And if I can't be sure I've got a court, I don't want to sit there for an hour, and wait. So reservation time slots for when we're most busy, and then kind of open time slots feels like a thing we could get to. But there has also been requests from those folks who can't get gym time in the winter because the gyms are full. Can they play soccer and futsal on the tennis courts and on the wall balls in those seasons when it's not being used? So I think there could potentially be a market for renting it out for there's birthday parties or private lessons or other sports in those places was downtime. So I think the more we can get people to use these services, provided we're not ruining them, feels like more better.
I agree with you to some degree. I will say those courts are actually on the weekends, they are so busy. I mean, you cannot get onto those courts, which is a great thing. And I think in the mornings, midweek, I think the afternoons probably it's not because
quiet.
people are working for the most part. But I do think our courts are well used at the current
Awesome.
state.
Okay.
That's great.
This speaks to like there might be hours where the reservation system will come in more
Yes, it
handy
would be
than in
wonderful
others. Yeah.
Saturday at 10 a.m.
Yeah.
I wonder if users would use a QR code. If we could say, help us understand the usage better, please check in when you use the courts. Let us know if you played tennis. Let us know if you played pickleball. Let us know your thoughts on how the courts are holding up,
I love that.
maintenance, like voluntary,
Feedback.
almost like a voluntary sign-in, just if we can see if we can gauge usage during specific times.
I think that's a great idea.
I don't know if people would take the time to do that, but we can ask.
Yeah, we'll give some guidance, be something.
So I like the idea of the keys going away. I also like the idea of a reservation system, but limited in some regard, because I don't like the idea of, the same one or two people being able to just pay and block out. So, most people have park and rec logins. So you could log in, you've shown your residency for preference, but maybe it's, and I'm really in particular interested in hearing from the tennis people or the people that use pickleball, but maybe limited to one reservation a week so that it's not just blocked out, that a few people that, you know, can't afford to and have the wherewithal to rent online can just be blocking out massive amounts. I don't know if that's doable. And then, you know, for the pleasure of reserving rather than just waiting, a small, a nominal fee just to kind of maintain that platform. I don't know, what is that? How's that resonating to you guys?
I agree. I also think you should, it's oftentimes I've seen systems where you have free play built into it. So there's certain hours of the day that you cannot reserve. It's really just drop in, first come, first serve. And I think that that's very important. And there typically is some sort of feature that, you know, the availability becomes open on or live, you know, it's like Saturday at 8 a.m. for the next 7 days. And that there are, you can book 2 in the week's period or something like that. Don't you think, Tim? I think I've seen that.
Yeah, in fact, one example, Piper Park, their system is great. I noticed that you referenced their rules in here, and we can, you know, touch on that, or if anybody listening wants to look through it. I think it's a great model, and I think what I like the most about it is if we do implement a reservation system is by blocking off exactly what Commissioner Koenig said, a 2-hour window. And what that allows people to do is to do drop-in. And something like pickleball, it's not just, you know, somebody calling up their friend and going down and doing it. It's building a community. It's people that they've never met before. It's a very fast moving game, and games can last 15 minutes. And so what having that block does is it has 15 people showing up, and they all can socialize, meet each other, network. And it works very, very well at Piper Park. And it's I've been to 2 other communities where they have that 2-hour window, and it becomes a routine for people to go and show up and be a part of the community, which is great. But
Can you think of what they were off the top of your head? What communities?
well, up the coast, pretty far up, the Sea Ranch facilities, they just put in 3 new pickleball courts, and it is very, very popular. They have been doing the reservation system where you log in and you can reserve it. And in a small-ish town, it brings about 20 people all together. They've never met before, and they have a similar interest, and it works really well.
There's also a system up in, it's part, I think it's North Lake Tahoe.
Just gonna say that Incline Village has a system they use.
I actually just got an email because I was registered through them. I'll circle back on the actual name of the municipal group that it is, but they have a setting where they have open pickleball, they have tennis courts that you can reserve, and actually had pickleball courts you can reserve too, even during the pickleball open play, where like it was a Saturday for 4 hours. People come with just themselves and their paddle, and they do the rack. But then there were also pickleball courts available to reserve if you have a foursome who's ready to go. So they had a really good system, and I'll send it to you.
So I think the one topic we haven't tackled is whether is the striping to unstripe.
So from my perspective, the unstriping, because it's an expensive endeavor and it doesn't sound like we have full knowledge of the usage, I think first and foremost would be collection of that data in order to make that as an educated decision. And then if you know the numbers bear out, I'm completely in favor of removing them, or not if the numbers are the other way. But for me, I just don't have enough to intelligently say one way or another.
I can't give numbers. Painting a tennis court is very, very expensive. I think the only drawback is the tennis players that would prefer not having the lines there. I'm an avid tennis player, but I've learned to accept pickleball. It's not going anywhere. As long as it's not a neon yellow stripe line that's really affecting anything. It's kind of just the way of life now in a public court. And those, I mean, I hate to say it with my group of friends and everything, but you know what, if you want just a tennis court, there's private clubs that you can go to. This is a public court, it's for everybody. And so I feel kind of strongly about that. I think my opinion is leave it as is. Also only having 2 courts in Town Park and 2 courts at Granada, that's a total of 4 for a very large community and a very fast growing sport. I don't think it's going to be enough. I think there's going to be overflow that's going to go onto the tennis courts. And it seems silly having empty tennis courts and, you know, an hour wait at the pickleball courts.
Emily, am I correct that the Redwood courts aren't open to the public, correct? I think I've been by there on the weekends, and I don't think they're open. So our courts are all there is.
And then Piper.
And Piper.
And then the ones by Joag.
I do believe Redwood is open to the public on the weekends. I've played there on the weekends before.
You were breaking the law or they were open? No, I'm joking.
It was allowed, however, the times that I've done it has been during summer. It was during summer now that I think about it.
Several years, because I've tried to break in. I'm joking. I've tried to use the door.
Tried to break the law. As long as you didn't hop the fence, it's all I care.
So I will, as an avid tennis player, agree with Tim that I also play pickleball, and this is, both sports are in our community. I think we need to represent the tennis players also, though. And it would be frustrating, I think, for tennis players who are waiting to get on the tennis courts if there's pickleball people playing on the tennis courts when there's room over here. I mean,
Oh,
so I
yeah.
think that there needs to be some prioritization in the signage that says, if you're playing pickleball, see courts A and B first before here. The lights are going to be the issue that I think that presents more than anything. The other thing is that I feel like a little persnickety saying this, but sometimes at pickleball, there's really loud music that goes on. It's kind of a party, which is super fun when you're playing it, but when you're just 4 feet away playing tennis, it's a little distracting. So I just had that experience at Town Park, and it was just a very different environment. In fact, the next time I was playing with the same group of people, we went somewhere else because it was so distracting. So it's just something to say for the tennis players, but I agree we should represent.
That was pickleball players who were listening to music while they were playing pickleball.
Which is against
Amplified.
park rules to have amplified
Sorry.
music.
Amplified music?
Sure it was.
Well, like, yes, well,
Sure,
it's a
speak
little
up.
amplified
It's
thing.
still
but
amplified.
It sure was. It was disco, which was like the whole thing. But it was distracting. You know, I don't mind the other people playing. That's great. It was just the whole scene was different, and it's a little culturally different.
I agree with what Tim brought up about that you kind of adapt, that, okay, it used to be, we had this solitary space. Now we're sharing it. And,
Totally.
you know, back to kindergarten, we're learning to share. But I think since it is a public space and provided by the town, we want to provide access for as many people as possible. So yeah, I'd say keep it and use your QR thing.
Could we potentially share the space on Town Park tennis courts only after hours when the lights are needed? I mean, it would be very difficult to enforce, obviously.
I would hate to say if there's empty courts for someone to not be playing on it. That's not.
Right.
the
So
point.
priority
That's truly
goes
not
to
the
tennis
point.
players
I
when
think that
pickleball
maybe
courts are
somehow-
available.
Yeah, somehow trying to allow prioritization of people waiting for tennis on those. There's only 2 courts, right? And then there's 2 and 2.
Yep.
And then there's potentially extra pickleball if no one's on them.
The other thing we haven't talked about is a lot of cities have pickleball time only and tennis time only. So that is something you can put out there and say, look, from these hours, it's just tennis. For these hours, it's just pickleball. So that's a couple cities have gone that route to say, it's very clear, these courts on these hours are only for tennis. No pickleball allowed, sorry. You got to go play somewhere else. But that's something we literally have to promote out in all of our communication. But that's just an option that cities have gone to.
And has it been successful?
I think it's a learning curve. People have to, understand that, hey, it's now going to be, and that way, the pickleball players, can't still blast music. It's illegal, but, can be a little more rowdy when they're playing with just pickleball and not have to worry about a tennis player who might be upset when the tennis players can have some peace where it's just tennis time.
I also think that if we were to implement a reservation system, it would negate this whole discussion in a sense, because you could, if someone doesn't keep their reservation, there's an open court, then anyone, you can go play badminton or whatever you want to do, right? So use the resources, use the facility, but if you have the reservation, you could also designate these hours, like you're saying, Tim, it's pickleball on Saturday mornings or it's tennis, however you could make the availability based on that.
And those I've seen mostly on shared courts. I haven't seen those on where there's, obviously, hey, if there's, and like I said, most of them are shared. So it's like, hey, this is the time that if you want to go play tennis, you go at this time, and this time you go play pickleball.
The last thing I'd mention is that, I mean, it really does come down to figuring out everybody in the community's schedule and when the tennis people play. So the one thing I will say is I'm a data guy. When you have a system, when people are reserving courts, it's very easy to track who's signing up for pickleball, who's signing up for tennis, and then you can adapt schedules based on that. It's kind of the easy way to go. But again, this always comes back to how much is a system like that is going to cost, and are we ready for taking that on?
I think the other thing we need data on is this wall ball and how often it's used for solo tennis, how often it's used for solo pickleball, lacrosse, soccer, and what other people are using it for. So I think that got to remember that we've left that open with that intent that it's not just for pickleball either.
So is the QR code maybe more the pickleball courts? Like, what are you, I guess maybe both courts, like, what are you playing here? Are you playing tennis? Are you playing pickleball? Are you playing
Yes.
volleyball?
Yeah. How are you using this court?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, and same thing with the tennis. So you're here to play tennis, and you've got almost two different QR codes. You're here to play tennis, you're here to play pickleball. Do you have loud music?
Tim, does
Are you
the,
gonna shoot off fireworks?
Turn it off.
does the registration system that we have allow for something like that already?
The
Civic
current one
Rec?
doesn't, but the one we're going to does. January 1st will be a brand new system that will allow to do this. Yes,
At no additional cost?
correct. It's all on the system.
I'm sorry, what
It's
was,
like, it's like,
Answered that question.
it's just like the ability to reserve we're going to have it. So it's base preview. Like you can reserve a picnic area online now. You can reserve other things online, at least, and some things you'll have to request, and things you can just book. There's one that you could just go ahead and book. If it's open, you could go ahead and book it. So it'd be a live calendar that you would be go in and see once you have your account, resident, non-resident, whatever, and book a court and get a confirmation and just go.
what did you say the name of the system was, or is
So
it?
we're going to go to Civic Rec, which is the Civic Plus is our website and our code, and Civic Rec is their rec software model they use. A lot of people use, is it Rec Desk? Keep getting, I think it's Rec Desk for just their tennis courts because their current system doesn't do it, but ours will allow to do it.
But what you're saying is you can't reserve pickleball for a party.
I mean, you rent the court as long as you don't break the rules. I mean, if you're having a pickleball party, then I guess I mean, no, but you couldn't reserve pickleball courts to have a kid's birthday party. No, it'd be if you have to follow the rules you use for, you basically would sign a waiver saying, I'm going to make sure I follow these when I play pickleball or I play tennis courts. Just like you would follow the rules for the picnic areas of not bringing bounce houses or large people, that kind of stuff, same kind of thing. It'll all be in the prompts when you reserve the facility online.
There's no other discussion. I'll attempt to recap. So from a keys perspective, there's pretty unanimous that we're open to removing keys and bring them back if we need to, but for now, removing keys with the idea that we want to have as many people using the courts as possible. Striping follows that same philosophy, leave the stripes as is, with the intent that we hope a lot of people are using the courts, and then let's get some data to find out how people are using it. And then there's a lot of excitement around this reservation system. It's another great source of data because people will sign up and tell you how they're using the system. And that will inform kind of, I'm sure, how you change the reservation system rules and regulations, because you'll know when people want it and when people don't.
And I assume with some caveat of the reservation that people can't book so many in a row, like some type of like,
Within boundaries, right? Like, yes, you can't book, I can't book, 9 to 12, 5 days a week for the next 9 months, kind of like within, I think.
Saturday morning.
Yeah, Shannon had some good ideas that it was like, there's a week
Could be.
block.
Could ask on the survey, would you be open to a reservation system?
Yeah.
I think that there's also a standard.
Mhm.
Oftentimes, like if you're playing singles tennis on a reservation, it's usually 60 minutes. If
Yeah.
you're playing doubles, it's 90 minutes. Pickleball, it's sort of, it probably the easiest thing to do is do hour blocks.
Yeah.
And then you fit in, if your doubles is maybe no one's after you. I mean, who knows? But that's probably the easiest way, is just hour blocks, whatever people are using the court for.
Sometimes it's first come, first serve, and then you can't book more than a certain number of days in advance, and you can only book a certain number of hours, kind of a limited number of hours.
I don't know if you're done with your list, but the other thing that was brought up was the rack system, and that's something that also Piper Park has implemented, and it's very, very successful. It's the quarter on the pinball
Yeah.
machine.
great.
Even if there is a reservation system for open play or when people show up, it's kind of like a low budget
Low-fi way to do it.
system that kind of brings people together. So I'm supportive of that. And I think it mentioned it was only like a couple hundred, it was like $400
Yeah,
or
it's not-
something to
yeah.
put it in there. That seems like a no brainer to me.
It's actually one of the, I think, the coolest things for a sport that requires 4 people. that people don't have to coordinate and make this all work out on their calendars. You just show up.
Yep.
You've got people to play with of all levels. Everyone is welcome. And like Tim said, people really build community, make friends. I mean, it's really awesome that a sport that is usually very difficult of paddle sports require a lot of coordination. And this is just a neat way for open play that in a game that works for all levels.
So then, Tim, are you looking for, I mean, you've gotten a lot of ideas, but coming back with a more concrete proposal, or you want one from us that's, the reservation system is only for, a week in advance, that you can only reserve within that week 2 times. I'm making these up, right? Whether there is or is not a cost that's different for residents or for non-residents, whether and what times should be blocked out every week that can't be reserved at all are always open. I mean, are you looking for that kind of specificity, or will you bring that back to us to talk about?
I think that level of specificity would be valuable, but maybe 1 or 2 commissioners get assigned to work with staff to craft a survey. And maybe we don't, because staff needs to learn how to use this new system when it goes live January 1st. Perhaps we give it the winter and spring and maybe midsummer have a recommendation, like see what the usage, see if we can get data on the usage for the first maybe 6 months of the year or less, depending on what we think, and then have a recommendation for a reservation system after we see how it works.
Yeah, I think the biggest one is if we decide not to go with the keys, and obviously we wouldn't start that January 1st. If we're going to say, hey, for 6 months with this QR code up, and we're going to see how it works with having the ability for people to play on both, and see what they're playing, and then we, like Rebecca said, we come back in June or July with here's the reservation system works. Here's kind of the parameters that we're thinking. We roll this out, in the fall kind of thing. I also like to communicate with tennis people. It's like, hey, here's what's coming, so So, we don't get the request to buy the keys.
Right.
again.
And not just a QR code, but maybe blast in our newsletters, a couple links about what we're thinking about and asking just usage information from people who want to respond to our request for information. And we advertise that in all sorts of available social media platforms. And just see if we can start getting information back from users and users live in the field via the QR code at the courts.
Do we have information from the last rec survey on tennis?
Which the master plan survey? Which survey?
There was a usage survey before the master plan survey. Trying to remember. I'd have to
Was
look
before my
what
time.
year
I
it
don't-
was.
I can go back and look. I don't know.
Pickleball courts.
It would be very out of date.
So essentially we would remove the keys as of January 1st and it would just be open, first come, first serve. And people just following the general. Are the rules going to be up by that? Like signage in terms of time limits?
I think we'd have to decide on time limits. We'd have to decide on, like we talked about, having a pickleball courts open, your pickleball player should play there first. And then if obviously there is not tennis, can play tennis first. But the reality is you may have both pickleball courts filled and the single pickleball court on the tennis court filled, and the rotate through still happens. I think that's something we'd have to update and then possibly change in 6 months.
I think having the period of just open availability is good. It's during the winter months in spring where it's wet. So
Right.
we have to just understand the usage is going to be lower than the rest of the year typically. But I think that will give us good data. And I think generally people do, there is sort of just general etiquette around public courts and people do tend to follow it. So I think should be fine.
It should be. And if not, we do
Well, a
something
room full of
sooner
pickleball players.
rather than later.
I'm assuming, Rebecca, we do not need to take any.
Is that going to be part of the signage we bring back?
It will have to be for tennis courts, yes. No, anything else I've forgotten or
No, we'll plan when we go to ad hoc committees to assign one.
that
to
was
help
my
you with
next
this.
question.
Yes,
Work on a survey with us?
to work on a survey, yes. When we get to section 7, routine and other matters, we'll do it there. So with that, let's number 2, B, more signage rules and regulations. Tim, what do you have for us?
I would say this has been a long issue for me since I got here, that signage in the park isn't great. There are a couple ones about no glass, dogs off leash, and not inputting anything in the turf, but overall, there aren't some great general rules for all of our parks. When we had the opportunity to update the ordinance, it was time to redo the signage. Over the past year, we have gotten the large complaints about amplified music, the people having legal parties, the people who are putting pop-up tents, putting up volleyball nets, kind of breaking the rules. And it's hard to enforce for staff to go out there and say, well, you can't do this. Well, there's no real sign to show it. Or we print out a laminated park rule signs and it's hard for PD or for staff to enforce. So tonight we are just looking for some design options. I gave some examples as attachments. I will first disclaim that I am colorblind in brown and green. So if I say it's brown, I'm sorry, it's brown, it's wrong. Just before I say, oh, I like this color, just so if it's off, I apologize. So I'll disclaim that now. Based on what I'm looking for is which of these designs you like. We kind of gave a variety of, hey, a lot of wording, hey, not a lot of wording, hey, some really cool pictures, kind of a hybrid. So kind of looking for just like, hey, to go through, it's like, oh, I hate this one, let's not even think about it, or hey, yes, we will. Sorry, you can share. I'm not even going to try. I'm not sorry. Yeah, this new computer's cursed.
See how it works for me.
You go. And then basically what we'd like is have some input, basically to come back in the next meeting with some mock-ups with our logo, our ordinance, and then with some places it'll go, and what it'll look like at each park, so that we can obviously get the new ordinance updated and the new park rules. It is a long-running issue for staff and for Central Bend PD, and just the staff in general, people who just don't follow the rules. I will say one thing I did not put out, I apologize, this is only in English. It'll probably be in English and Spanish, the signs. But just looking for general layout, what you kind of like, what you kind of don't like, what you think pops, what kind of gives you heartburn. And then we will come back in October with some mock-ups of possible signs and locations. Questions?
So while both things are most helpful, are you looking primarily to have something in writing to which you can point, or something that actually people see and digest on their own? Again, both would be preferable, but sometimes it's not possible.
Well, I would open for discussion. I think for PD, it's easier to point to the code, the ordinance they're breaking and saying, hey, this is the current code ordinance you're not following, is turn your music off, take down your bounce house, take down your 30 by 30 tent, whatever it is. And I think that would be helpful. I think everybody sees the sign differently. Some people see the long word and just kind of ignore the whole thing. Some people see the pictures like, oh, that makes sense, I shouldn't be doing this. But anything would be incorporated in all of our new signage, all of our new rental information, and all of our communication, obviously, on social media and all of our newsletters. So I think it'd be a little bit of both if we could, the perfect world. Because people don't, I think a lot of time you see a long list, people tend to glance over it. But if something kind of catches your eye, it's a little easier to enforce.
Right now, our signage mostly, it's few words and numbered.
It's very few words and a couple numbered codes, correct?
I would definitely favor the signage, the examples like what these two that are up that have images along with words, because words we all just brush over. And exactly. And so I think the Walla Walla and then the all blue, I don't know which venue this is. Those are the two that I think after looking at these I personally favor the most.
Yep.
That one and the one prior that says park rules.
I think Commissioner
That
Koenig is talking
blue
about the
one.
all blue one. I agree. I think it's a nice icon family. It's very simple. Even folks that don't speak English as their primary language can at least know what rule they're looking for. And then there's very, very few words. I think even the bullets on the other, I mean, it's going to get lost. I think less is more for sure. The blue one is a good one to start with.
What I like about the one immediately after is that the park hours are just displayed right at the top as like a subhead. And then what was nice about that navy and blue one is also the QR code in case you wanted to quickly go see the full list. of rules and then also having it in Spanish online in the bottom left corner.
But I think our signs will be in both English and Spanish posted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I like that you can get, if you want more
Absolutely.
comprehensive information, you
Absolutely.
can go find it easily. And I think QR codes tend to work nowadays, at least.
Tim, our signage right now is like a wooden and metal combination of different things. Is that?
I think it's all metal. It needs to go on some wood posts or some metal posts, but that's pretty much it, only in a couple areas of the park.
And then we've got some impromptu sandwich boards.
Well, that's too correct.
But is it the idea that we would replace it'd be another piece of metal signage?
I'd come back with what would kind of look like in locations of the park. And keep in mind, we're talking Granada, Skunk Hollow,
Yeah.
Town Park, Cove. I mean, overall, the same signage would be out through the whole town.
And replacing the existing signage and adding new signage in areas where park rules are currently frequently being
Yeah.
ignored.
Okay. I think just from the material and the coloring, that may be a consideration for someone who has a better understanding of the wear and tear of these signs, but I would imagine less color probably helps a little bit. So more on the park rules, blue and blue, or fewer colors required to make sure it's still legible for living in the California sun.
I think what we liked about the blue one was how concise the bullet explanations were. So when you say it'll be in both languages, would it be a blue sign in Spanish and a blue sign adjacent to
For the
each other?
areas that are my most troublesome, yes. I can see it in Town Park in several locations where we have the most traffic.
Do we know how many points we're making? Right? So for example, this one has 8 rules. They're the general park rules, the colorful one.
Mhm.
The other one has substantially more. We're not making this inclusive of all the rules. So have you a thought as to which of the rules we're wanting to pull out and highlight? Changes
There
the
are
format.
probably 8 to 10 that really pop for us that I can bring back several options. I think obviously, unfortunately, dogs off leash, the amplified music, the scooters in the park, the large groups, the picnic, the canopies, bringing your own tables and chairs. There's a bunch that pop really quickly that, that I get the complaints about. There may not be as many as this, but there's probably 8 to 10 that are most commonly, at least in Town Park, not followed.
More than this one.
Yeah, I would say so.
We could maybe look at the blue one and see what's not necessary.
Well, I think you can also use this as a template. You could write whatever you want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just wanted, I was getting a sense because, so I liked, like everybody else here, it sounds like, I like the combination of the blue park rules and then the more colorful general park rules. Those two the best. There are things about each that I liked. I think the park rules one, the all blue one, is a lot of literature. And I think people are going to have to stand up close and look at it. So the benefit of the general park rules, the more colorful one, is I can see what's being prohibited real quickly, even just at a glance. It doesn't mean it necessarily has to be that format, but there are reasons that that's more, I think, visually easy to ascertain what the problem is. So there are things on both of these two that I like. But I think this is harder. The blue one is it's smaller. It's harder to read. You have to have someone that's like, I'd like to be very thoughtful about what I do here. Let me get close and read that.
Right. So somehow merge the two together to combine both.
There is yeah, like I like that this says general park rules, suggesting this isn't it, folks.
Right.
I liked the QR code on one of them. There's this sort of combination. I like having, for the officer's benefit, I like having the ordinance number clearly listed at the bottom of each. I think that's really informative. Anyway, I like that the blue park rules one had less words. Right, but I liked the bigger pictures on the more colorful one so that someone just glancing at it can even get the point. So yeah, for me, it was a combination of these two.
Okay. Perfect.
I think the only thing I'd like to also strongly encourage is having them make sure that they're graffiti resistant, because you may as well have a big yellow or red circle that resembles a target for this, because spray paint is going to find them, for disgruntled people that don't agree with the rules, because most of the signs in Corte Madera Park have been tagged.
Yeah. Yes, that's.
Do we know what the dimensions we're talking about?
That'll come back in the next meeting. This is just which design you like, and I'll come.
I mean,
couple.
ballpark, are they 3 feet?
I think it depends how many rules we put and how you can still read them. So I mean,
I would imagine they'd be at least this size.
yeah, probably
At least.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is,
11 by 17.
if not larger. But
But again,
That's
this
a
is
good
like,
size.
you know,
it's a standard.
there may be bigger signs in Town Park, but smaller signs at Granada. Like, okay, you don't need the giant sign at Granada. We're not gonna have some, but some general, maybe smaller that you can see. Or, you know, you really, I was talking to the Larkspur Park Rec Director, and the 2 top parks in Marin are Piper and us. Per data, by far, the 2 top parks
Believe
for
that.
people come and use it on a regular basis per the cell phone data and the Place Your AI, the number 2 parks in Marin. Or Town Park and Tech Park.
We're lucky to live where we live.
Yes.
Also, do we have any information from the enforcement officer about what needs to be on here?
So I think for the enforcement officer, the biggest thing was park hours, because we used to be open until midnight, and then we obviously pared that down to 10 p.m. So that was something they needed to be able to point to. And I think just clear rules that he can, you know, or he or she can basically say, here's what you're violating. You know, we've gotten a call. Please follow the rules. I think that's what the biggest they have, is just that we don't have anything to point to. Because back when we were open at midnight, people were partying until 11:30, and they might not have amplified music in the park, but that's just, you know, nothing good in the park happens at 11:30. Sorry. I told my 15-year-old who came in last night at 11:30, I'm like, it's too late, come home. So, but it would be run through by the chief and Public Works before any of that happens, absolutely.
Are there specific like town colors, like a specific brand guide or something that you're supposed to adhere to, or it's kind of anything goes?
No, we have been making a concerted effort to stick to the branding in our town logo.
Yeah.
Blues, greens,
Okay.
basically the gradient of colors in our logo.
I think that's always nice, right? Having all your signage across all public things just consistent, so people recognize immediately this is rules from the town.
And the wonderful thing about designing in Canva is that it has our logo embedded into it, and it lets you take those colors and transfer that into whatever design you're working with.
That'd be great.
Not me, sorry.
Tim, is there any more feedback that you would like from us on our
No.
artistic designs?
I think this is good. I think I will work on this and bring it back in October, with obviously some pictures of where they'll be, several mock-ups, and size, and then get some final input. And then obviously we're kind of coming to the end of, I think it's officially ended in Labor Day, but we still have some people using the park. But I think it's winding down, obviously, one, because of the large soccer program, there's not a lot of space in the park on a weekend. But again, when we start up next year, to have all these ready to go, so that they're very clear to everyone.
Is there any Rebecca public comment, emails, or raised hands before we close this business item?
Just a moment. Let me get my computer back. We do not have any raised hands, and we did not receive any emailed public comment.
Right, moving on to staff updates and commissioner reports. Tim.
Thanks, Heather. So we had our last outdoor movie at Cove School on the 13th of September. We had about 175, 200 families show up. Cove was always challenged. It gets kind of cold over there, but they battled through it. We worked again with the PTO over there to, they sold some snacks. They promoted their school, and it's always a great event. So that was on the 13th. Fall enrichment is in full swing. There are 906 kids enrolled in fall enrichment. Again, Aaron is doing an amazing job reaching out and getting those classes programmed in both Cove and Neil Cummins. They are full and bustling at the seams. Oktoberfest, October 5th. It is the 5th, I confirmed. Park and Rec will be again organizing some activities and games for the youth up on the top lawn there. I know this ticket sales are on now, and I know some signs are about to go up. Are up currently for Oktoberfest on the 5th. A couple fall things coming up. Halloween family costume contest on October 19th. That is before the dance. We programmed this for the littles. Basically, we had families who were like, hey, it's kind of late for us to come to a dance. Can we come earlier and kind of walk around, take some pictures, and kind of experience it? So we said, absolutely. So that happens first. The dance happens after that, along with the family Halloween dance. And then last on the 25th is the Halloween pumpkin carving contest and the wrecking dance kind of go hand in hand. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of mess, but families really enjoy it on the 25th of October. And the last thing I'll say as push is that I'm coordinating again with the group who does the turkey trot. And we are in search of volunteers, helping planning, run the day of, whatever. I need volunteers. They're a spearhead of two ladies who have been doing it for quite a long time. They're willing to kind of train some new people in to pass the torch. So if anybody is interested in volunteering, please email me. It's going out in the newsletter, and they're going to push it on the social medias to get some help on the day of the turkey trot. Thanksgiving morning. Where Thanksgiving morning, jazzercise starts, and then the turkey trot runs to the neighborhood, and they come back and have some light refreshments, and then people hang out in the park on Thanksgiving morning. They have a great time. They really, as long as it's not raining, knock on wood, there's quite a bit of people who hang out in the park afterwards on Thanksgiving morning.
Thank you, Tim. We're up to commissioner reports. Emily, you can take it away, and then we'll do individual commissioner reports.
Right. So the September 3rd town council meeting was canceled. The September 17th town council meeting started with a recognition of our very own Sarah for all of her 8 years of hard work and dedication on this commission. Couldn't stop myself. I also sent a public comment on behalf of the Parks and Rec Commission. So she got her due. And then I think relevant to Parks and Rec, there was the second reading of the proposed conduct of public parks and recreation facilities that we all talked about at some length during the last commission meeting. And then there was the Parks and Rec request regarding temporary banners in the public right of way regarding the turkey trot. Am I missing anything, Tim, that was Park and Rec related? I don't think so, but
That was it.
there it is, short and sweet.
Any personal commissioner updates before we send the line, Emily?
You're looking at me like I should have.
Yeah. Before you see the floor,
It's like I'll conjure up one. No, I don't have any.
Lisa, any commissioner updates? No. I have a couple. I had a request from a community member to take a look at the step that's at the it's the concrete step that has the yellow painting on it that goes into the back green room that's kind of closed off. There is one concrete step that walks into the sidewalk that is painted yellow on the edges. It's hard to see if you're not looking, but a gentleman, you're coming from behind the community center, and those the brown wooden steps that's all been closed off because it hasn't been there is a concrete step that comes into the sidewalk. It is square, it is yellow painted, it is hard to see if you're not looking, and it's a little bit of a danger hazard. So there was a request to kind of take a look at that as a potential hazard. As I mentioned during the pickleball discussion, a lot of conversation around usage of the ball wall. Soccer folks are interested in services they can play soccer on in the winter months when the gym is unavailable. So whether that's a basketball court, tennis court, pickleball courts, that could potentially be a source of opportunity. Parking has gotten wild, particularly at the that one lot right behind Cafe Verde, kind of the main one where the bathroom is. So thinking about the far lot near the post office seems to have spaces. I suspect there are also spaces near Petco, but thinking about ways to kind of make it more obvious that people can park over there and access the park pretty easily. Maybe something to think about. This is kind of every afternoon while soccer's happening, certainly on the weekends. Signage, there was more parking over here, but there's also that fence that opens up that's been locked, that's over by the dance studio in that far part. Potentially thinking about unlocking some of those to make it just easier for people to get in, that access to the east field when most people need to go to the west field, but it's something. And then activities, Wednesdays, 1:30 to 3. Erin's done an amazing job. She's gotten Lego in there, but that is the gap in the school day that kind of messes with every parent. So more activities in that 1:30 to 3 zone would be amazing. Anybody else? Yes.
I was contacted by a community member saying whatever happened to the field trips that the rec department used to provide on rental buses or whatever, and that they missed that opportunity to go on those excursions. Also, that Wednesday afternoon, there was some talk about could we have seated exercise during that time? So sounds like it's a popular time.
The Executive Advisory Committee did not meet. For routine and other matters, please take a look at the calendar. We have no set agendas for October and November, but this week was commission goals. So anybody want to add anything to the agenda for October or December?
So it might not be for October or December, but certainly as a potential future agenda item, now that I have partaken into the glory of the Corte Madera Football Club competitive soccer arena, I have lots of thoughts and feedback on that. And so I would love to have that as an agenda item at some point in the future, but I think maybe we want to get through the season. So probably not this October or December, but definitely something to talk about.
So like a review of the program,
Yeah, I think so.
probably a December, I would guess, or January, because they'll have everything wrapped up by then and probably all final numbers in. But I would say probably December, January.
All righty.
Should we put in an update on the status of the Intergenerational Center for one of those months?
We can put it in there. I won't have that update. It's coming from Town Manager Wolf. So until I have that update, we can add it. But until I get an update, I won't have anything to tell.
My understanding is that it goes to the council next Tuesday, so we'll see.
Any other?
We do need to decide on the ad hoc for the tennis court discussion.
Yes, so I was about to go there. So if there are no other agenda items, we're going to assign some ad hoc committee assignments. So do we have any volunteers who would like to help Tim work on the pickleball and tennis rules?
Commissioner
The Tim and Tim show? Okay.
Someone else gonna second that? Yeah, I'd be happy to help you any way I can. Tim.
Second, third it, and Shannon. All right, so we got Tim and Shannon will help you with that.
That's needed.
Great.
Thank you.
We also probably want, you probably want some help, maybe Tim, guidance on master plan, coming back with like, what are our big budget items for next year? Is there anybody that is interested in helping Tim figure out what of the next things? Patty, I love it.
Not that we already want to overburden Emily and her new role, but it's always been our goal to find out more things we can do or plan for teens in our community that they will actually attend.
So new Emily. All right.
You're out and about and you want to pick the brains of your peer group people. What can Parks and Rec do for you?
Yeah, they definitely exist, and my friends always do pickleball over the courts. It also reminded me about the field trips. I mean, Redwood, we haven't done field trips in years, and a lot of high schools have just completely stopped. And I'm not sure about how field trips would work through Parks and Recs, but I mean, I'm sure kids are really missing that experience. I don't even know if all middle schools do. I don't know if they're doing field trips, so I think that, and yeah. So I want to add. Oh, also, for that QR code, I think that just for like age equity, maybe even just putting a link to a website, or if we have, it's a part of the website already, just so they can go look in other places if they don't know how to scan a QR code.
Are there any other ad hoc committees we need to put together at this point? All right. All right, who's in charge of the next
Temperature management.
meeting? Patty.
It's October.
Patty, yes, you're on deck to attend the council meetings. Our next regular meeting of the Parks and Recreation Commission is scheduled for Monday, October 28th, 2024. If there is nothing else, then we'll close this meeting. Thank you so much for your attendance.
Thank you.